Let's start with a scenario. The scenario is this. I am an only child in my mid-30s, and I have no wife or children. In place of any family, any bloodline of my own, I call various and many people my friends and follow them wherever they go. And while doing so, I tell them I was going to cause strife in their marriage, strife in their family, that I was going to make their children hate them, and all the while filling their heads, the children's heads, with things that make them love me. I make sure that my friends know that there will be nowhere they will be able to go to hide from this agenda of mine, that I will follow them and not only make their children hate them, but specifically make their sons hate their dad, make their daughters hate their mother. And while I'm at it, I'll make sure those feelings are mutual between moms and dads toward their children. Besides that, I will cause marital strife between my friends, between the husband and wife, and any other family members that may be living in or around their household. But I'm going to do this all in a way that they will never expect it, and they will all think that I'm trying to help them, trying to heal them. But in reality, they are giving me their positive, loving attention, while I am the one causing their family unit, to be destroyed. I even share this comical little agenda with my father, and we laughed about it. And I was bold enough to tell my friends that I would be doing it to them and all of their friends if I was ever introduced to them. When I told my friends this, they all told their friends, and even mass emailed and posted on social media what my intentions were, so that their friends would have a written notification. I did not try to stop their efforts to thwart mine, because I know how to beat them. I know how to get around them and play them all off of each other. They must have forgotten what I told them. What do you think of me in my scenario? What do you think of my agenda to destroy my friend's family unit and ensure they honor me? I'm so great. You have got to love me for how much I love my friends. I just want to ensure that we have that special connection on a one-on-one basis. Well, with my dad too, of course. The other family members only distract from that. So their family must be torn apart, individualized, so that they can each share a one-on-one love with me. This plan, this destruction of their family, is saving them from themselves. We have come up with a plan whereby our perfect love will overshadow all other lesser family attachments, which could never be as great as mine. So I am saving them from that agony, that pain. Who cares what they want, right? So, again, what do you think of me? That's the end of the scenario. Now, let me read something to you. I prepared this ahead of time. I took it verbatim from a King James Version Bible. This is Matthew 10, verses 34 to 38. 34. Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. 35. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. 36. And a man's foes shall be they of his own household. 37. He that loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. 38. And he that takes not his cross and follows after me is not worthy of me. So, in order to be considered worthy of Jesus, you must allow him to break up your family unit. And that is exactly what he said he came to do. Verse 34 again. Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. 35. For I am come to set a man at variance. Now, what is at variance? It is the Greek word dikaizo, something like that, spelled D-I-C-H-A-Z-O. It means cut into two parts, to cleave asunder, to sever a man from his father and daughter from her mother, and make foes of his own house. Verse 36, the word foes is the Greek word ekthros, spelled E-C-H-T-H-R-O-S. It is from a primary ektho, which means to hate, hateful, passively odious, or actively hostile. So according to the Bible and the words that Jesus allegedly spoke, everybody says, oh, you can't pay attention to what Christians do or say. You have to be, you have to pay attention to what Jesus actually says. So this is what Jesus actually says. Okay, that he came not for peace, but to completely tear apart the family unit and make family members of the same household ekthros completely hate one another. Let me read it again. Matthew 10, 34 to 38. 34. Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. 35. For I come to set a man at variance, okay, which means to cleave in two, against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes' hatred shall be they of his own household. He that loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and he that takes not his cross and follows after me is not worthy of me. So you see, there's awful lot of family destruction and unworthiness if you do not allow that family destruction to take place. But is this copied anywhere else in the Bible? Answer is yes. Luke 12, 51 to 53. 51. Suppose ye that I come to give peace on earth? I tell you, nay, but rather division. 52. For from henceforth shall be 5 in one house divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. 53. The father shall be divided against the son, and the son against the father, the mother against the daughter, and the daughter against the mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And Jesus allegedly also says in John chapter 14, verses 7 through 10, 7, If ye had known me, you should have known my Father also, and from henceforth you know him, and have seen him. 8. Philip saith unto him, Lord, show us the Father, and it suffices us. 9. Jesus says unto him, Have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He that hath seen me has seen the Father. And how sayest thou then, Show us the Father? 10. Believest thou not that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwells in me. He does the work. The chaotic, pathetic family breaker who came to cause family hatred within the household, his words in the text, is saying that to see him is to see the father of him, the ghost who raped the 13-year-old perpetual virgin. That means that it is the agenda, according to the Bible, of both the Jew son and the Jew ghost father to cause family division and hatred. In love, of course. I guess the commandment about honoring thy father and mother, Exodus 20:12, is subjective. Subjective to what split personality is showing itself at the time. This is all in accordance with deceptive, dark behavior, hateful behavior that is violent and chaotic. This is perfectly in line with Yaldabaoth, who is Jehovah, who is a plagiarism of Set, the Egyptian sand god of barrenness, bisexuality, violence, chaos, temper tantrums, materialistic, egomaniac, etc. And then the Son. The alleged Jesus is the alleged Jewish offspring of a 13-year-old perpetual virgin who allegedly had sex with a ghost and got pregnant. And we don't need to delve deeply into what is written about the childhood of that alleged Jesus to see the same traits displayed between Yaldabaoth father and Jesus son. Jesus, what we call Jesus, is Hebrew and comes from the Hebrew Yehoshua, which means Jehovah is salvation. And there is that salvation that no one needs. Just like the salvation I offered in my scenario, my example. This has Loki written all over it. Loki, the androgynous bisexual, who is a dark, deceptive giant who ate the heart of Golveg. In case any of you don't know, eating the heart of something fresh after the kill was a symbol of honor to that which was killed. It was respecting the life force of that which had just had its life taken. It was also a taking on of the essence of that killed life force. So Loki ate the heart of Golveg, taking on her dark essence and making it part of him. Golveg appears to be Angerbotha by another name. Angerbotha is Loki's wife. So Loki, in extreme grief, ate the heart of his own wife, Golveg, Angerbotha, and took on her dark essence, adding it to his own. This dark, deceptive giant force, who is both male and female, who is bisexual, fathering Jormungand, Fenrir, and Hela, Angerbotha, the mother, and Loki, giving birth to Sleipnir. That is who created the deceptions called Jehovah and Jesus, and Allah and his prophet. Those Abrahamic gods, prophets, are not only not applicable, they are not real. They are deceptions to cause division. Division in the family unit. Division from your ancestral roots. Division from your ancient belief system of your ancestors. Division via hatred and severing. Division from what is natural, sexually and otherwise. Look at who Loki is compared to the deceptions called Jehovah, Yaldabaoth, and his son Jesus. You see, all of the sexual depravities, debaucheries, and what is unnatural, nature being key in that word, unnatural and natural, all of these depravities and debaucheries and what is unnatural wrapped up in what those three Abrahamic cults have to offer. What they bring to the table, and what they bring to the table in those unnatural sexual depravities is another attack and division of the family structure. Ammianus Marcellinus, a 4th century Roman soldier and historian, says this about the women of ancient Gaul, our Celtic women folk. After describing the men, he says, quote, "All the Gauls are tall, fair-skinned, golden hair, and terrible for the fierceness of their eyes. They are greedy for quarrels, great braggarts, and insolent. A whole troop of strangers could scarcely resist a single one of them in a brawl, and particularly if he were assisted by his stalwart, blue-eyed wife, who, gnashing her teeth, distending her neck, brandishing her large snowy arms, and kicking up her heels betimes, will deliver fisticuffs like bolts from twisted strings of a catapult." End quote. Other writers of old have stated similar. Our women of Celtica blood, ancient Gaul, obviously, as told by Ammianus, were not pushovers. They were not subservient, meek, second-class beings of society. Now, moving on to Tacitus. Tacitus, or Publius Cornelius Tacitus, or Gaius Cornelius Tacitus, actually predates Ammianus by a few centuries. I placed him after Ammianus because of what he says in his writing Germania, describing the Germanic tribes about our Germanic womenfolk. I wanted to take the time to talk about what he reveals. So, Tacitus stated, quote, "In history we find that some armies already yielding and ready to fly have been by women restored through their inflexible importunity and entreaties, presenting their breasts and showing their impending captivity, an evil to the Germans then by far most dreadful when it befalls their women, so that the spirit of such cities as amongst their hostages are enjoined to send their damsels of quality is always engaged more effectually than that of others. They even believe them endowed with something celestial and the spirit of prophecy. Neither do they disdain to consult them, nor neglect the responses which they return." End quote. Many people, on hearing this, or reading that section about presenting their breasts, may envision that when German men were being overwhelmed in battle, that the German women would expose their naked bosom. I believe that to be completely erroneous interpretations of what was happening. That mindset is how society has been indoctrinated to view women. An overly sexualized society will see the sexual in everything. However, if we envision what was transpiring, we see that the women accompanied their men to battle as part of the fighting force, as we saw with what Ammianus told us about the Celtica women. If the men were retreating, the women, knowing the battle was lost, would lower their shields, presenting their breasts to the enemy. And the men would realize that their womenfolk would be taken prisoner. Remember, the full sentence was, quote, presenting their breasts and showing their impending captivity, an evil to the Germans then by far most dreadful when it befalls their women, end quote. Women in battle, showing their naked breasts so that their men don't give up, would also expose their nakedness to the enemy. And that puts those women at battle for the sole purpose of being sex objects in a second-class role. Notice also that Tacitus said the men believed them, the women, believed them endowed with something celestial and the spirit of prophecy. Neither do they disdain to consult them, nor neglect the responses which they return. That is important, as we will see. Our pre-Christian ancestors valued everything about our womenfolk. Tacitus describes their attire as well. To do so, he says that they dress similar to the men. So I will quote what he says about the male attire first. Quote, the most wealthy are distinguished with a vest, not one large and flowing like those of Sarmatians and Parthians, but girt close about them and expressing the proportion of every limb. They likewise wear the skins of savage beasts, a dress which those bordering upon the Rhine use without any fondness or delicacy, but about which such who live further in the country are more curious, as void of all apparel introduced by commerce. They choose certain wild beasts, and having flayed them, diversify the hides with many spots, as also with the skins of monsters from the deep, such as are endangered in the distant ocean and seas unknown. Neither does the dress of women differ from that of men, save that the women are orderly attired in linen embroidered with purple, and use no sleeves, so that all their arms are bare. The upper part of their breasts is withal exposed, end quote. Tacitus continues about husband and wife, quote, yet the laws of matrimony are severely observed there, nor in the whole of their manners is aught more praiseworthy than this, for they are almost the only barbarians contented with one wife, excepting a very few amongst them, men of dignity who marry divers wives, from no wantonness or lubricity, but courted for the luster of their family into many alliances. To the husband, the wife tenders no dowry, but the husband to the wife. The parents and relations attend and declare their approbation of the presents, not presents adapted to feminine pomp and delicacy, nor such as serve to deck the new married woman, but oxen and horse accoutred, and a shield with a javelin and sword. By virtue of these gifts she is espoused. She too, on her part, brings her husband some arms. This they esteem the highest tie. These the holy mysteries and matrimonial gods, that the women may not suppose herself free from the considerations of fortitude and fighting, or exempt from the casualties of war. The very first solemnities of her wedding serve to warn her that she comes to her husband as a partner in his hazards and fatigues, that she is to suffer alike with him, to adventure alike during peace or during war. This, the oxen joined in the same yoke, plainly indicate; this, the horse ready equipped; this, the present of arms. 'Tis thus she must be content to live, thus to resign life. The arms which she then receives she must preserve inviolate, and to her sons restore the same, as presents worthy of them, such as their wives may again receive, and still resign to her grandchildren." End quote. Tacitus's Germania is written circa 98 CE, Common Era, and it is written by a Roman who is making many satirical remarks in a pompous air about the Germans. If you have read his Germania, you know what I am speaking of. However, he does tell us some history of the Germans. When we take the clothing she was attired in, accompanied by the wedding gifts, which I'll requote: "There were not presents adapted to feminine pomp and delicacy, nor such as served to deck the newly married woman. She received an oxen and horse accoutred, and a shield with a javelin and sword. And she too, on her part, brings her husband some arms. This they esteem the highest tie, these holy mysteries and matrimonial gods, that the woman may not suppose herself free from the considerations of fortitude and fighting, or exempt from the casualties of war. The very first solemnities of her wedding serve to warn her that she comes to her husband as a partner in his hazards and fatigues, that she is to suffer alike with him, to adventure alike, during peace or during war." That was the wedding gifts. These are not meek, second-class citizens compared to men that are just going to show their naked breasts if the menfolk start to retreat in battle. They are going to present their breasts to send their menfolk the message: if you quit, so do we. And they lower their wedding gift shield, presenting their breasts. There is much more I could expound on from the Germania, with family, kin ties, blood ties, sizes of the family and the family unit, etc. However, it is imperative that you see a contrast. We have learned from just two historians of antiquity that our womenfolk ancestors were seen as equals, were expected to be equals, not second-class, weak, meek, subservient citizens. They were listened to, seen as being endowed with something celestial and the spirit of prophecy. That was a quote. Our menfolk respected their input, their advice, their counsel, consulting them and listening to their responses, which our womenfolk offered as equals. Our Celtic, ancient Gaelic womenfolk as well, they would, quote, deliver fisticuffs like bolts from the twisted strings of a catapult, end quote. These are just two writers of old speaking of two specific locations of our pre-Christian Wothanist ancestry. Other writers, historians, have said similarly of all our womenfolk from our pre-Christian past. But when we contrast what was just said by those two specific historians, writers, to what the foreign religion that was barbarically forced upon our ancestors says, we see a stark difference, which is why Judeo-Christianity was opposed by our ancestors so vehemently. I will just let that foreign document called the Bible, with a foreign false god, speak for itself. We have seen already that the false Jew god called Jesus, was a self-proclaimed family destroyer. It's his words. And that is why he came. He said so. So now we turn to Corinthians in the New Testament and watch women become second-class citizens. Compare this to what you just heard Ammianus and Tacitus say. So, again, using King James Version Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 7 through 15. This is speaking about hair length. Of all things, for an alleged God of creation to have his messengers speak about not what is poisonous, what is dangerous, shedding light on esoteric things, but to speak about haircuts. Yes, this does make sense though when you see it in light of the why it was put into the propaganda subjugation texts. As I have said in other conversations, videos, writings, our Gallic and Germanic ancestry saw long, thick hair as a sign of power. So these verses then make sense. They not only demean our womenfolk, they emasculate our menfolk and how they viewed life then at that time. So verse 7, quote, "For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of the man." 8, "For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man." 9, "Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man." 10, "For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels." 11, "Nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, neither the woman without the man in the Lord." 12, "For as the woman is of the man, even so is the man also by the woman, but all things of God." 13, "Judge in yourselves. Is it comely that a woman pray unto God uncovered?" 14, "Does not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him?" 15, "But if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given her for a covering." So now 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verses 34 and 35. 34, quote, "Let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law." 35, "And if they will learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is a shame for women to speak in the church." End quote. The Abrahamic cults have destroyed our families. They have made our womenfolk weak, meek, second-class citizens that no longer are sought as possessing something celestial and the spirit of prophecy, but are not even allowed to speak in a church. And it has also weakened and subjugated the menfolk, enslaving all and each to a false god with a pseudo salvation. Christians like to say, don't judge Jesus by the actions of other people who claim to be Christians, but instead read the Bible and pass judgment upon reading the Bible. These Christians need to read their Bible for what it is. Plainly says it. All you have to do is read it without making excuses for it. Without fear. Set your feelings aside. Open your eyes. Notice the deceptions of Loki. Throw off the foreign chains of your enslavement and hail our gods and goddesses. Hail our ancestors. Wassail.